what is your thought about Psalm 22? Does that refer to Jesus? Because we have variants in the text, so please explain that.
Well, I think there are differences, but I think there is an important. Jesus on the cross says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He says this in Aramaic, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which is the same as the Hebrew, except Ezer, uh, Azar of Tani is the word for forsaken me, but it's the same. And what he's doing is something that was known in the ancient world, and people still do it today, and that is quoting or citing the first line of a whole composition. And many, certainly the Jews there who went to synagogue, who read, who studied, who did their bar mitzvah and became full Orthodox Jews, would have known this psalm. They would have known Psalm 22. It is a lament psalm describing one who goes through great suffering and great sorrow. And there are many parts of it. And I think that Jesus, in summarizing or citing the first line of it, was crying to God. He was at that moment going through a time of rejection, where God the Father could not look upon the Son and could not commune with the Son in the same way because he was taking upon himself the sins of the world. And so God, being holy, could not connect with such a one and turned away from him. And so I think Jesus, feeling and suffering that, then goes through from there and describes much of what he went through in the crucifixion in those in that account in Psalm 22. And I find much of it, of course, is emotional, and is a description of going through a lot of struggle and trials. So I find that to be very compelling as a description of Jesus' own experience, as I do the rest of that psalm. Um, my own understanding of the whole book of Psalms is informed by this as well, because I think Jesus used the Psalms for him. They were his prayer book, they were his hymn book, they were what he spent his time with and his mind with. And so in terms of his human nature, they were a great part of what informed his prayers, his thoughts, and everything. And that comes out on the cross as it does in other places. I think the Gospels tell us a great deal of what Jesus said and did, but the Psalms tell us what he thought and felt. They give us an insight into the interior life of Jesus and are another important reason for us to study and understand the Psalms and what they have to benefit us.
Yes, you said once that if you want to know what Jesus did, read the Gospels. But if you want to know what Jesus taught, read Psalms. So, yeah, great quote. Yeah, so now, if I understand correctly, you want to say that this was not a prophecy about Jesus, but rather he identified himself in those
Oh,
situations. Yeah, can you explain that part?
yes, I think the psalmist, though, in some sense experienced something of what Jesus did in crying out in this way. So there is this term that gets used sometimes in trying to describe such prophecies, a typological or a type, in which this psalm and the psalmist behind it becomes a type of Christ in terms of experiencing and going through this kind of suffering. And so in so many ways, Jesus connects with that. And I think we find this through the Bible, that God is the same God in the Old and New Testament. He works in the same way in so many instances. And while we have a much better covenant through the sacrifice of Christ in the New Covenant, we still find in the Old Testament much that is there that anticipates what we will see in the new, not only through direct prophecy, but also through this sort of typological experience where this text is like that. It's one going through that kind of experience.
Yes, Jesus is like a Davidic king. Yeah, so I like that.